The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction, but also the opportunity to sit here with all of you. I took so many notes from this morning, and I found it hugely engaging. I think also this presents an opportunity, us sitting together, and ECUS being a member of a classically known peace-building organization, to demonstrate the need to break down silos and to look at, I think we've seen the advent and the investment and the improvement of early warning systems, but before that, we always knew that there were points of inflection around elections. And I think we've all been working in this arena, but what we need to look at also is very much the before, the middle, and the after, and that came out quite pronounced this morning. I just want to carry a few reflections of what I took away from some of the other panels without summarizing them, but it was very clear on the decline of democracy, about the need for inclusive civil societies. So I'd like to speak a little bit more about that. The need to show and not tell the value of democracy. On extremist groups, I think there's quite a lot of understanding. The more we sit with civil society, people will tell you we know why our brothers and sisters are joining these groups, and they need to be presented with a clear alternative. We know what some of the approaches to those are in the short term, but in the long term, we need to look at that investment a little bit more carefully. And then, of course, also taking away from this morning, the timing of election support being critical. And so a lot of times when peace-building organizations intervene, it's very much in the preliminary stages up to elections, and we've seen opportunities that have been presented where that's really worked if the engagement has been serious. So in bringing together civil society from across the Sahel, for example, the Horn of Africa, one key theme always emerges in these meetings, and we ask what should be prioritized when supporting governance and democracy and democratic transitions, and they say inclusivity. And so we've got pretty good language around women, around young people, and noting in the year of the youth, if you look at global demographics, and not just Africa, that young people under the age of 25 are the majority. And so it's hugely important that we look at ways and innovative ways to include them. And how do you include them? Social media and disinformation has become a massive problem. It's also an opportunity. And if we want to look to innovation, we need to include their ideas and their thoughts, because this is the group of people who will be here to solve the problems moving forward. By inclusivity, we mean the whole of society. So I have a list that's like half of the page on my note about what that means. I think the question isn't sort of checking the box to say, okay, marginalized communities, women, young people, different languages, but I think if you put ourselves in the head of who are we not including, what does our society look like, we're going to have a much better idea over the long term. When we also look at the statistics of conflict, we no longer have a beautiful bell curve of conflict, we have a heart monitor. And I think the duration, the severity, the kinds of conflicts that we're seeing require us to be able to take an approach where we break down silos, where we look at the inclusion of really meaningful whole societies, and we focus to some extent on the need to respond quickly, but we tame our patience to be able to commit to long-term solutions if we really want to look at transitioning and cycling countries out of conflict. There's been quite a lot of good civil society work that's been done to strengthen democratic elections and civic education, and more needs to be done, and it can be done to engage with young people, and particularly women and youth-led CSOs. They have different kinds of access. And so when it comes to building trust with local authorities, we need to look at those partnerships in a more sort of substantial way. And when I say that, it's not just short-term stabilization and the long-term engagement and the whole of society, this is about, I think Mr. Reines-Djivanides mentioned it just a minute ago, about purpose and about belonging, but it's also about hope. And there's also an element that people want to feel if they go to the ballot, that that vote makes a difference and they're going to be able to have themselves a different future, that they will have different choices, that they won't necessarily have to move somewhere else to eat. And you can make peace, but you can't make peace with people when they're hungry. So I think that we have sort of parallel conversations about the nexus. When is it do you do peace building? When do you do democracy building? When do you do governance? And we have to have a whole of society, and I think an integrated approach on the ground in a different way. In terms of recommendations, ensuring sort of the engagement, and I think we need to really unpack what that word means that we don't have time to do today. What does it mean to engage with the whole of civil society meaningfully? There's other things that we can do as well. And in terms of the partnership, there's between the European Union and Africa, I think there's other and innovative ways in which we can move forward. I was just thinking about DG INTPA, for example, has developed a youth sounding board mechanism. And how can this or related tools be used to leverage more youth inclusion in election processes? Are there, new and different ways in which we can have dedicated staff members on youth engagement, on electoral monitoring? How can we provide and strengthen the role of CSOs? This is not just financial. I mean, we also need to look to the European Union for their political role in this as well, to make a space for African civil society in this partnership, and make a space also for European, but recognizing the power imbalances there. I think plenty of other recommendations that came out of two statements that EPLO has done, one on the European-African Union partnership, and then in the context of the upcoming Youth Action Plan, we brought together young people to feed into that, and both of those reports and statements are on our website, so I won't go into too much detail, but I think in concluding, it's civil society is fine. We have to look at what that constitutes and who is in there, and we have to recognize where we have strengths and where we have no access, and make room and the partnerships and the support and the political and financial support to bring those other organizations that have access beyond ours, because it's only when everybody, including those that are part of the problem, become part of the solution that we're going to start to see change, and when we can also recognize that this kind of change takes long-term commitment. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you.